Hello, my name is Peter Bellino. I'm the associate winemaker here at Castello de Amorosa Winery. We're down in the Grand Barrel Cellar, which is beneath the castle. And it's a 12,000 square foot room with Roman vaulted ceilings, and it's really just a beautiful space. But the reason that I like it so much is it's an ideal place to store your wine. It's the next best thing to a natural wine cave. With these really thick ancient brick and stone walls, it keeps the temperature constant. We do have humidity and temperature control on this room if we need to use it, but it really is pretty minimal. I'd like to talk a little bit about the different types of wine barrels that we use. And we have Nadalier and Boots and Baron. These are different manufacturers of barrels, and they all bring a little bit of a twist, their own little signature on wine barrels, and they all taste a little bit different. And also, each cooper will toast barrels due to our specifications, and they'll make wine barrels from different forests in France. And each type of forest and each type of toasting level has a little bit of a nuance to the wine. And you can think of it as if you're using spices when you're cooking, usually a small amount of many different spices will give you a better result than if you just use a whole bunch of one particular kind of spice. And that's how you can think about the reason of why we use so many different types of barrels here. For example, we have from Nadalier two different types of barrels here. They are both 2011 vintage barrels. That means that they were produced brand new for 2011, and we just filled them this month. The word Allier refers to the forest in France, and you can compare that to the Tronchet barrel. Those are two distinct forests. That means that the wood that went into these barrels was actually harvested from a particular forest over in France. And they bring a different set of flavors, and they have a different impact on the way the wine ages. Different grain thicknesses, meaning how far apart the grains are from each other, impacts how quickly the wine can penetrate into the barrels, and that in turn will impact how quickly the oak flavor is imparted into the wine. There are different types of toasting levels. The first barrel we have is an SHT, that means slow heavy toast. The second barrel is a medium plus toast. Medium plus toast is probably the most common that you'll find in the Napa Valley here. A slow heavy toast barrel, on the other hand, goes a little bit heavier on the toasting, but it's very long, and you get a nice caramelization of the wood sugars and a much different toasty flavor in your wine. We're going to talk a bit about malolactic fermentation, or as some people call it, the secondary fermentation. This happens when a lactic acid bacteria inside of the wine converts malic acid into lactic acid. Now this can happen naturally, or you can introduce a cultured bacteria, and here at Castello de Amorosa we do a little bit of both. Sometimes it's good to introduce your own bacteria because you can predict the results better, you get a cleaner fermentation with less off aromas that might occur. While you're fermenting inside of the barrel, you keep a fermentation bung on your barrel, and that's because the gases that are produced by this fermentation will blow the bung out of the barrel, and we don't want that to occur. With the fermentation bung, it's vented so the gas can be released. At the end of the fermentation, we switch over to a solid bung for aging. There's a couple of reasons why we want to do the malolactic fermentation. One of them is that it softens the acid in the wine. The lactic acid is a softer acid, meaning it's less acidic than the malic acid. So by going through the malolactic fermentation, we are actually softening the acid in the wine. It'll taste smoother and less sharp. It's important to note that nearly all red wines are put through malolactic fermentation, but not all white wines are. Really, Chardonnay is the only white wine that is traditionally put through malolactic fermentation. Sometimes you will do all of it, and sometimes you'll do a portion. We tend to do about 30% malolactic fermentation on our Chardonnay barrels. So after the red wine is drained off of the skins, it goes into one of these fermentation tanks inside of this room. And these temperature jackets allow us to keep the wine warm or cold depending on what we're trying to accomplish. Right before we fill the barrels, we want the wine to be at about 60 degrees. That's warm enough that we're going to encourage our secondary fermentation, the malolactic fermentation, but not so cold that the wine is going to warm up and overflow the barrels after we fill them. So when we're filling, we have a hose connected to the bottom of the tank, and the hose goes along the floor here and into the stainless steel line in the wall here, and that allows us to transfer the wine straight down to our Grand Barrel room or our lower cellars. We are in the cave here at Castello di Amorosa Winery. The cave is dug straight into the hillside up above the castle into Diamond Mountain, and the cave really creates an ideal storage place for your wine barrels. The temperature is naturally 55 to 58 degrees Fahrenheit. Your humidity stays at over 70%, and this is all natural due to the earth. Once a month, we have to come by and we have to top up the barrels. The reason for that is that if you have too big of an air gap in your barrels, you can actually lead to oxidation of your wine, or you can produce what's called VA, which is volatile acidity, which is a bacterial spoilage of your wine. So every time you top a barrel, you have an opportunity to inspect it, and this is what we call quality control. First, we look inside with a flashlight and we see if there's any kind of film, bugs, or anything like that that's floating on the surface. There hardly ever is anything wrong with the barrel. And then we also can smell the barrel, and the smell can tell us a lot, whether we're having some kind of bacterial spoilage, some wild yeast like Brettanomyces, anything like that. The barrel smells nice and clean, so now we can go ahead and top up the barrel. Most white wines are fermented in tanks, which we have up in our tank room upstairs, where we have some temperature-controlled triple-jacketed fermentation tanks. But our Il Pasito and our Chardonnay are actually fermented in barrels down in the barrel cellar. Right here we have one of our Chardonnay barrels. When we fill these, we put the Chardonnay juice directly in the barrel. We fill it about to this level, and that allows for some foaming and expansion that occurs during fermentation. So the reason that we ferment Chardonnay in barrels, we pick up a little bit of oak flavor right off the bat, but also we are collecting all of the yeast lees and some grape solids at the bottom of the barrel. We call that lees. And there's a process called batonnage where we take a barrel stirring device and we stir up the lees back up in the solution. We basically keep the wine very cloudy. That accomplishes two things. We extract and produce some different aromatics that are characteristic of that style of wine. This is a process that comes from Burgundy. Also, we are building up the mouthfeel of the wine. We add a little bit of viscosity to the wine, which creates just a more luxurious style of Chardonnay. We're down in the sub-cellar of Castello di Amorosa, and this is the third barrel storage location we have. The first two being the cave system and our Grand Barrel room. We're going to talk about racking and red wine barrel storage. When you store red wine, the lees is very compact and it settles at the bottom of the barrel. It's nothing like Chardonnay, which could have a couple inches of sediment. Red wine usually is pretty compact. And what you want to do is rack that wine a couple of times a year. And by racking, what I mean is we pump the wine out of the barrel by sticking a device down in here, which is just a stainless steel tube. And we stop putting it down before we get down to the sediment. And that way we can pump out the clean wine off of this sediment. We do this a couple of times a year, and then at the very end, right before bottling. The purpose of this is the more times you clean up your wine throughout the aging process, the less you have to do right before bottling. And what I mean is fining, using different fining agents that might strip things out of your wine but help you clarify, and filtration. By paying really close attention to the aging process and racking the wine when it needs it, you minimize the intervention you have to do later on.